views of the videos that we put up of the meetings, I noticed that about 30% of the time that we spend in meetings is actually talking over each other. There's a pretty basic rule in Robert's Rule which says you got to wait to be recognized by whoever's running the meeting. In this case, it's President Thomas. If we were all to just wait to be recognized to speak, our meetings would be about a third shorter. I know it doesn't always seem like that, but that's happening pretty pervasively. That's one thing. A second thing is about the treasurer's report. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think it's violating the Brown Act to actually send out an email blast. So if you wanted to, just as a FYI, I think it'd be proper to send out an email blast with with the report that you're already making. That way you wouldn't have to print it out and incur that cost. Thank you.
Fair enough. Mr. Anand.
First off, thank you all for electing me to be the new chair of the Sustainability Committee last election. But I just wanted to mention that there is a Neighborhood Council Sustainability Alliance, and if we want to take part in that, we'll have to agendize an item for next month, and we'll have to appoint someone. I would volunteer to do that, to go and represent us on that Neighborhood Council Alliance. So that's what's going on with that committee, and hopefully we can get that organized.
Good man. Just send me an email to remind me, and I'll get it on the agenda. All right. With that, I believe we can... Yes, Mr.
So
Robbins.
for the Bylaws Committee, we would like to have one more member to make it an odd number. Currently, right now, it's myself and Mr. Luna. Is there a board member that would be... All right. Stacey Rains.
Stacey Rains, very
Let
good.
the record reflect.
There it is. All right. With that, we can jump into new business.
Bring 8R. We should jump to 8R while we have a quorum.
All right, Mr. Lazarovitz would like to jump to 8R while we still have a quorum. 8R, the VNNC to create the position of Assistant Secretary, an election of the primary secretary to take place at the meeting today, and to confirm with done according to our bylaws. Do we have any discussion or debate on 8R? Yes, Mr. Candido.
If you can give us a little background on why Mr. Henry is our...
Yes. I don't believe so, but according to our bylaws, he's had 6 terms and you can only have 2.
Yeah.
And he has served honorably and professionally since the beginning of time. He's been our secretary since, Mr. Schultz was in his 20s, but we don't want to be in violation of our bylaws are done. And if this goes through, I would hope that he would be the assistant secretary and help whoever wins transition to the job of secretary.
John stated that he no longer qualifies.
Howard and Thomas Sung had extensive discussions in regards to this.
Could I ask a point of order? I've had a discussion with Mr. Sung, and he claimed he hadn't talked to Howard. Now, maybe this is happened post that, but I mean, I have to believe Mr. Sung's letter, which was written the end of last week.
Last Friday, Thomas Sung contacted me and asked me in an email when this conversation had took place. I said that the conversation took place at the Congress on Saturday, October the 5th, I believe it was. He has not responded to me after I emailed him back with a pretty extensive email. He made his position very clear at that meeting. It's a matter of this. We have 2 sets of bylaws by which we are governed, the 2012 and the 2014 bylaws. The difference between the 2012 and the 2014 bylaws are simply that the definition of stakeholder was changed in 2014. In 2014 bylaws, it clearly states that no executive board member can serve in a given position for more than 2 two-year terms. I asked Mr. Hendry at the executive board meeting when he was elected secretary the first time. That discussion was that he was elected to the post of secretary during Jamie Cardero's administration, correct?
Yes?
And then you served again during Mr. Waleko's term, correct?
Yes?
Then you served again during the first term of George Thomas, correct?
Yes?
How many terms have you served at this point?
I can't tell because of the odd neighborhood council election sequences. They 2 years sometimes, more at other times. But I would go back to the comment that President Thomas made at the election, which is the only thing anybody can go on, when President Thomas said he had talked to the city attorneys and I could run again.
No.
It's in the minutes that you just passed. If you didn't read the minutes,
I did
you
read
have
the
real
minutes.
problems.
I did read the minutes. In
I made the
those
revised
minutes,
copy of the
he
minutes,
spoke
and
to
I
the
stated
city
it.
attorney.
Point of order. Point of order,
I have
Mr.
the
President.
floor. I have the floor. During the talk that George Thomas and I had with the city attorney clearly stated that we were governed by our bylaws, and the bylaws clearly state that you cannot serve more than 2 two-year terms in any one specific position on the executive board. If you ran for president, then you would start another two-year term level. If you ran for vice president, again, you could serve 2 two-year terms. Again, if you ran for secretary or for treasurer, you could serve 2 two-year terms. But at this point in time, you have served 3 two-year terms.
I still would be very interested, though, in talking to the city attorney. I wasn't invited to the meeting.
Yes.
It's fair to suggest that.
What
as I
does the
say,
bylaws say?
I'm simply going by what Mr. Thomas said during the election. That's all anybody can do. If Mr.
When
Thomas
when
says
you
something
ran,
and
wh-
it
wh-
gets wrong, it's
Mr.
up to
President?
Mr. Thomas to correct it.
Can be heard, Mr. Anand, did you ask to be heard on this first?
Yeah.
Can I go?
Anand.
Would like to speak after Mr. Anand.
All right, Mr. Anand and then Mr. Lin.
I just have one question for you guys, and that is that even when we have a bylaw change, do sunset rules apply? Now, as you know, we have a governor who has served more terms than he was allowed to, quote unquote, serve, according to the laws, because the laws were changed after those terms were served. As such, if our rules change after those rules have been made, do they apply retroactively? So that's the question I'd ask you. I'm not really sure what the answer is to that, but
changed from 2010 through 2012 through 2014.
so the term limits have never changed.
Term limits have never changed. Only the status of a stakeholder was modified.
Okay, well, that answers that question.
Mr. Lin.
All right, my question is this, with all due respect for everyone, I don't understand why we're in this situation. It seems to me during the last meeting, Mr. Henry was elected. The president stated that the sunset provision had been extended by the city attorney or whatever. That's what he said, and that's what we voted on in an open meeting, okay? Now, after that, we were always in this situation where someone has some conversation with some guy downtown, whoever he is, and then we wind up back here, it's basically being told that whatever we voted for and whatever the minutes say now don't matter because of some conversation. I'm not saying the conversation did or did not take place. I don't know. All I am saying is that we ought to live by what we voted on, and if the city attorney has an opinion to the contrary, whatever it may be, we should have it in writing from that city attorney what we're supposed to do.
Even if it's in direct violation of our own
Who
bylaws.
says? Then let the city attorney give us something in writing saying that what you did is in violation of such and such.
When Jay
Fine.
Handel, and you were not here for that vote,
Training.
Jay Handel arbitrarily, I'm sorry, it was not Jay Handel, it was Leonard Schaefer. Leonard Schaefer sat down with our bylaws, looked at them cursory, and made a decision that John Henry could run for a third term,
Okay.
all right?
I've been here for every vote, so what are you
Were
talking-
you here for that vote?
If it was a vote, I was here.
All right. This was 2 years ago.
He wasn't.
Okay, I wasn't elected yet.
All right.
Right, so you
All
weren't
right.
here.
So 2 years ago, when we had a vote,
Yeah.
and Mr. Henry was not eligible to run, Leonard Schaefer looked at the bylaws. Glenn Bailey was here, and Lydia Grant was here.
Yeah.
Lydia Grant disagreed with Leonard Schaefer. Glenn Bailey disagreed with Leonard Schaefer, but John Henry was allowed to run for a third term,
Okay.
a third 2-year term.
So,
So may I,
So now he has run for a fourth 1-year term.
right. I'm not debating it. I'm simply saying.
But I'm saying.
What are you saying?
That we have voted on bylaws, and those bylaws govern us.
Well, didn't they govern us last month?
They did, but look, you can vote any way you want to vote.
Yeah.
But the point is that if the vote is nullified by done,
Which is what
and the
happened.
entire and the entire election is
Which is-
decertified by done,
what I was gonna say.
you have to live with that.
Okay. All I'm saying is they should provide us with some written guidance or an opinion beforehand so we know what
They
we're
have
doing.
clearly stated, when George and I met with the city attorney, they said, we are governed by our bylaws, and we must adhere to the bylaws we voted on, passed, and adhere to it.
Is this a matter for the bylaw committee?
Well, it would be a new matter.
Do you remember that whole, if we don't speak over each other, our meeting will be about a third shorter? This is what I was referring to. I'm breaking the own rule now, but if we could all just wait till we're recognized to speak, we would actually we would all be heard, and it would be a lot more efficient. I know this is interesting to us, but everybody on that side of the table, this probably feels like a Jerry Springer show right now.
We'll go Jeanette Hopp and then Mr. Secretary.
okay, Howard just touched upon what I was going to say, which was that we've been threatened with decertification. I don't think we want to go through that. Everybody loses their seat and you start all over. Candido? So, bottom line, if they're telling us that we're violating the rules, Howard is saying we need to go by the bylaws, the city attorney says the same thing, then what we did was out of order, and that is the reason why we were trying to have the assistant position, because you don't have to change the bylaws to do that. And that puts Stacy in the job and him as the assistant, and then that way we don't have that problem with decertification and all of the things that go along with that. So it was much easier to do that than to keep fighting this over and dragging it out and having a problem for nothing.
Fair enough. John Henry.
Very seriously, though, there's always a lawsuit when you don't have a piece of paper, and there's not a piece of paper floating around this whole room. You can make paper airplanes out of things, but I don't see a piece of paper. A second thing is I did challenge the elections. I challenged the elections, all of them. We can have the whole hour over, and we can have Mr. Sung out here. I also even challenged Mr. Sung. I was very suspicious that Mr. Sung is making false reports that he's going to elections that he's not covering. So we have a lot to open up here if we want to open it.
Candido.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, and I understand Mr. Benjamin's concerns, and I'm glad he's bringing those up. But let's get the documentation, Mr. Benjamin. Let's get the documentation. I know that you probably have talked to whoever this individual was, but we voted. Okay, but I'm sorry. Mr. President, you're the president. We voted on it last month. Let's get documentation. We have a city attorney who represents Dunn, who represents neighborhood council. Bring him in here to finish this issue. We've gone over. We've wasted too much time on this. Mr. Henry, it's unbelievable. Mr. Henry's probably the one person that has done a great job next to the president. And you guys want to take him out. Why? Because you want the young lady to fill his position. Over and over again, you keep bringing up that you want the young lady to fill his position and that he can assist her. Mr. President, Mr. Benjamin, all I'm asking is let's get the documentation from the city attorney and put this to bed. That's all. I don't.
Fair enough.
We don't need documentation when we have a bylaw which governs us. That's like saying we don't need to call the police when a robbery has taken place.
No, and I hear you, sir, but they're talking about decertification of the elections? Is that true or not true? That the city attorney?
It's a threaten.
Well, I don't
They're
know,
threatening
sir.
us
All
with
I'm
it.
asking is we bring the city attorney in.
Mr. Hendry and then Ms. Jenkins.
All I want to say, though, is I have waited for a piece of paper, and all I really saw at the executive committee meeting was George Thomas doing fist bumps with Stacey Rains. I mean, when you see stuff like that, you say the fix is in.
Oh, brother.
What was that?
Ms. Jenkins.
What was that?
I have served on the Sylmar Neighborhood Council because I have been a stakeholder in that community, and I've served on a number of other either nonprofit or governmental organizations that have bylaws. The bottom line, you've all had to be certified to be on the neighborhood council.
Correct.
And you've seen, you were supposed to have read your bylaws, and you've had access to the done bylaws. There is your written paper.
That's right.
And I think
the laws.
if you saw a fist bump, you don't know what it was about. The point is, it seems to me that this neighborhood council is trying to do right by the current secretary by allowing him to be an assistant secretary. And then it's not automatic who will fill that position. You will all have a right to vote for the secretary of your choice. And then, of course, if Stacy becomes secretary, I would assume that she would no longer be the education representative. I don't know if you can serve two positions, which is beside the point. The bottom line is you've got bylaws. You've all sworn to those bylaws. You don't need any other paper. If the city attorney comes or the representative of the city attorney comes, that person is going to say exactly the same thing, and then you've wasted valuable time at another meeting.
Thank you.
Mr. President?
Thank you very much.
For your legal.
Mr. President?
Penelope.
I think the bylaws trump everything else.
Correct.
That is our
Those are our official laws.
laws that we are to follow.
Exactly.
Which ones?
They both say the same thing.
Haven't changed.
The only thing that has changed from any bylaw is the definition of a stakeholder. Other than that, nothing has changed.
So with that, I call for the vote.
Any other discussion on this?
I have one.
Yes,
piece.
Mr. Yes.
So in every legislative body, there's going to be questions about rules and regulations and bylaws. And so if there's ever a question, there's a position that handles those questions. That position is the parliamentarian. It's like the lawyer for the body. If we don't have an actual staff, if we don't have legal counsel, it's the parliamentarian. The only thing that would, and that's not me, by the way, it's Joseph, but the only thing that would outrule our bylaws is actual law, criminal, local, state, and federal law. That's the only thing that would outrule our bylaws. But at the end of the day, the actual conclusion is up to you, Mr. President. So I'll leave it at that. I would just ask, and this is almost a personal favor, if we could really just not talk over each other, because we really are going to extend this meeting way past it needs to be if we're just going to have start conversations. Thank you.
Candido.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, last month you eliminated a position because you didn't like that council person, and she's no longer here. Now you're trying to get rid of Mr. Henry because you want to replace him with this young lady. Yeah, they do. Let's be honest about it. I have the floor. Mr. Henry, thank you from everybody that loves Van Nuys, because the one thing you've shown over and over is you love Van Nuys. There are people here with agendas, and we're going to prove that their agenda is always what favors them. And so to try to get rid of you without the documentation, and yes, they say bylaws trump everything else, then bring the city attorney and say, this is the facts, the bylaws do this. That's all we're asking. 1 month, Mr. President. You're going to become a future assemblyman. Please stand here and say, you know, we voted him in last month. Let's keep him in until we have the city attorney's written opinion on this.
What pleases the council? What do you guys want to do? Mr. Anand.
Vote now.
Okay, so, you know, as someone who was running the bylaws committee and as someone who's also did vote for Mr. Hendry, I just want to say that the fact of the matter is that the way it's written, Mr. Luna is absolutely correct. what everyone's been saying is correct, that the bylaws are the rules that govern the body. And if by our own fault we allowed someone to run, we should have barred that person from running in the first place. This should have been brought up beforehand.
I tried.
So I know some discussion was about it, but it wasn't made clear. So that's part of what left everything so wide open, if you will. So if you do something, it would still take the now to remove that person. Would that also take the requirement of the city attorney and everyone else involved to then run and do another? Or are we just talking on this agenda item to add a new seat? Is that what we're talking about, to add a new position?
The way that it reads is that we would be electing a secretary and establishing the position of assistant secretary.
So
If it pleases the council, we can table it till next month.
Yes.
Everyone we talk to has a different opinion. Whether it's a neighborhood council commissioner, whether it's a city attorney, whatever city attorney we talk to, we get 10 different opinions. Leonard Schaefer, who is our commissioner, has one opinion. Lydia Grant has another opinion. Howard and I sat in a meeting for 2.5 hours with 3 city attorneys, and we didn't get an inch farther than here we are now. What we are trying to do is make the council not get decertified and the election not get decertified. So everyone is coming from a position of caring about this community and caring about this council and not wanting the election to be
Exactly.
decertified. Mr. Henry has served as the secretary for a very long time. From the cheap seats that I'm sitting in, from this cheap seat, I can tell you I don't know what we do because every opinion we get is different. So whatever pleases this council, I'm happy to go with.
George?
If Mr. Henry wants to be the assistant secretary, he can. If he wants to be run for the man on the moon, he can run for that as well. But we want to make sure that the powers that be downtown don't decertify the election. And that is what Howard was speaking to, that if Mr. Henry got elected to a 6th or 8th term as secretary, and you can only serve for 2 terms, that act that we did in September would then nullify the entire election and put our council in jeopardy. And
So are we saying that Mr. Henry would continue to do the same, essentially fill the same position, do the same tasks?
I would hope he would do the exact same work.
So it's
writing
just a
this
matter
so-
of changing a title, really?
Correct.
Is that so? If it would please you, Mr. Henry, would that be something that would be all right with you to have essentially a title change?
I might consider it, but the simple point I would like to make is I went to law school and I've never heard worse arguing than I've heard here. Very respectfully, I want to see something in paper. Throw me a paper airplane and I'll shoot it down. But throw me a paper airplane from some city attorney.
Is our bylaws,
Well,
no paper?
What we could do
Here's
is
the bylaws.
origami. We could practice origami at the next meeting, and it doesn't have to necessarily be an airplane. It could be like a paper dragon or a paper fish. Jason Ackerman.
Okay, so in the time you've all spent arguing over this, I've had the time to actually look up your bylaws. And it specifically says Article 4, Officers, Section 4, Officer Terms. The officers shall serve a term of 1 year. An officer may hold the same office for a maximum of 2 consecutive full terms, aka 2 years. However, no person shall remain on the executive committee for more than 5 consecutive full terms. So
Okay.
you're kind of in trouble either way by keeping Mr. Henry as your secretary. I could applaud his minutes and his commitment to the neighborhood council and his diligent attendance of bank and other neighborhood council functions. However, you are in violation of your own bylaws.
That's right.
I can show you the bylaws right now on my tablet if you wish to examine them. But please, let's get on with this and get on with the meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Ackerman. So, look, if it pleases the council, my recommendation would be for Mr. Henry to serve as the assistant secretary. Whoever does become the secretary, his training would be important and needed, but we don't want to have the council decertified or the election decertified. So that's where I'm coming from. Mr. Henry could serve as the secretary. He's been the secretary for my entire presidency. It's fine. We disagree, but we're always nice to each other about it. I don't mind Mr. Henry, but what Mr. Ackerman brings up is entirely important and true. When we're in violation of our own bylaws, somebody downtown on a Wednesday afternoon that might be bored could decertify what's going on here. So what you guys elected me as the chair of this council, from this position, we do need to iron this out. So I will go off of your guys' recommendation. Do you have something, Mr. Lazarovitz? Joseph?
Let me remind the board that we elected Mr. Henry. We tried to keep him as a secretary. It's not that we trying to roll over somebody else. We try to keep him, but we find out we were in violation of our laws and bylaws, and we have to bring a new member to take his place.
We don't have a choice, that's right.
It's just that we have to. That's the law. We are governed by bylaws, and this is the law. Okay? If we're not doing it, then we're going to break the law, and there are going to be consequences. Part of the consequences, it could be decertified.
Correct.
So I think the right thing to do is keep him as a secondary, help Ms. Rain become the new secretary, or whoever's going to be the new secretary, and he's going to help her with the secretary's work. It's not that we try to get rid of John. We voted for him. We voted him in, except we find out that we were in violation of our own rules.
Nobody else is going to run.
And this was the problem.
Donna and then Candido.
I just want to say one quick thing, that the whole board should be more important. I want to do public comment at the end of the day because I couldn't get here on time. Anyway, the whole board should be more important than one person. So unfortunately, it looks like you're going to have to do what you're going to have to do. And I don't think it's just because so we can get Stacy on. It's just something that has to be done. So, yeah, no, sorry to hear that.
Candido.
Mr. President, you said it yourself. You've heard from many different people. On a whim, somebody downtown can say, oops, I'm going to decertify you. It's possible. It's very true. And that's why I understand Mr. Benjamin's concerns. But the issue is, if you wait one more month, even last month, you folks could have checked in and said, wait a minute, city attorney, we need a ruling on this. Is Mr. Henry, and are we in violation of our bylaws? But you guys didn't. Okay, give it 1 month, and if Ms. Raines, we know she's going to be in there.
She's not going to run.
That's fine. We can get her in there. But let's do it by the book. Let's do it by the book, and they're not going to decertify you in 1 month. Not 1 month. Just give it 1 month and treat the man with dignity. Treat the man with dignity who served this community. Not because he wants power, but because he loves Van Nuys.
Treat him like a person.
We did. We
What,
voted him for another term.
Yeah, so let's get.
We did. We voted him for another term.
Get it?
All right. So if it pleases the council, we could table this till next month. We could see what the city attorney says. What do you guys want to do? You guys tell me. What do you guys want to do?
Vote now.
Table. And ask the city attorney.
You're going to have to table it
And if we
because
take,
Ms. Rain's no longer.
I mean, maybe this should go to the bylaws committee.
trouble again.
That I'm not trying to make a power grab unless I just turn down the nomination.
No, I understand.
This whole time I was trying to step up to the plate, and now it's looking like, and I'm so young and I'm trying to start out so early, I don't want this to look bad. So the only way I know how to prove myself is by not taking the nomination. I just won't do it because I'm not trying to replace him. I was trying to help us.
Right.
But that's not the way it's
exactly right.
looking, so I'm
That's
just not
exactly
even
right.
going to run for it. I'm just
Well, so now
not.
Stacy doesn't want to serve, so we're still at this position of what do we do with the secretary's
Can I
position.
make a suggestion, Mr. President?
Mr. Luna, you are the new secretary. Thank you.
Let's kick this back to committee, in this case, the bylaws committee.
Committee.
Let them come back with, let them come back with a very clear explanation of what needs to go on. And as long as we, and by we, I mean the bylaws committee is in talks with the city attorney, they're not going to decertify us because we're in talks. When they come back to this general council saying this is what needs to happen, then we'll be able to make a decision with a clear conscience.
I would be happy with that. Is the council happy with that?
Yes.
That we
And-
find out what the city attorney and the Neighborhood Council Board of Commissioners has to say?
I would
We
be
have a
happy
problem
to take
because
that
the
on.
Neighborhood Council Board of Commissioners have already said that we are out of order in addition to done, and they're the ones who will decertify us. So if we let this go, we're in big trouble.
We
I
also
don't know
have
why
nobody
you
that
want.
wants to serve as secretary because Stacy doesn't enjoy this back and forth and thinks
I don't
that
blame her, and I'm hoping that she changes her
have
mind
like a
because we have a problem now that we
Empty
wouldn't have had. But
Just for the good of the community, you can ignore it.
we already have things in writing that say, and you had an esteemed individual here, and a number of other people who have said we have bylaws. There is your written form you want. We've had numbers of meetings already, and all of us have been told in one forum or another that they want to decertify us. Why should we allow that to happen when all we have to do is vote her in? And they said that that was okay. We could just do that, and he could still be on the board, and there's no problem.
like another minute on this and then figure out what we're doing. Miss Jenkins.
I have been working with the president of another neighborhood council in the city. And I'm not going to go into particulars about what the problem is, but every day he has been like in and out of a court-like situation to make sure that his neighborhood council doesn't get decertified. And, you know, there are a lot of other repercussions.
Correct.
So to say to wait another month and then maybe another,
I think
Right.
We do have a meeting next Wednesday.
Jeopardizing
We do have a
ourselves.
meeting next Wednesday, the summit. Could we vote? George is seriously not going to be here next Wednesday?
Yeah.
and then next month have a vote on, you know, maybe Stacy will want to do it, maybe somebody else, but next month you would have a vote on the primary secretary. You would not be without a secretary. So I would urge you as someone.
That might be a very good idea, that we elect John Henry as the assistant secretary. The position of secretary sits vacant for a month, so we don't get decertified. And then whoever wants to step up can come and do that. From where I'm sitting as this council president, we do not want to have our elections decertified or this council decertified. I would not be doing my job for the community or you guys if I let that happen.
Correct.
So I would be happy making John Henry the assistant secretary. Nobody has more institutional knowledge than him.
Absolutely.
And we can have the secretary's position be vacant
Institutionalized.
for the next month. Would that be okay with everyone?
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Legislatively and procedurally and
Yes.
according to the Sturgis rules of 1841 and everything else under the sun? Is that good? Are we good with that? Candy?
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, you guys think this is bad, but this is great discussion. This shows the effort.
We're working it out.
Exactly, even if we don't agree. That's why I'm going to appeal to Mr. Benjamin. Mr. Benjamin, you and I disagree many times, but I respect you, and I'm asking you, for the sake of a man who's dedicated his life to Van Nuys. And I know you love Van Nuys, and that's why I seek our arguments. Because I know you love Van Nuys, so I'm pleading for you, that let's just, you know, Mr. The young man here. Luna came up with an idea. We send this to the committee, it'll keep it safe. No one's going to decertify you in that time period. We'll come back with a conclusive decision. Now this lady, another opinion there, another opinion here, here's an opinion. You folks are the board. Please, for the first time, let's find people.
So here's what we're going to do. I make a motion. Here is, as just a council person that has the floor, my motion would be that we accept the language in 8R as is, the VNNC to create the position of assistant secretary. I think it should be John Henry, just saying. And then an election of the primary secretary to take place at the November meeting. And we can all sleep on it, we can digest it, we can talk about it, we can we have a straw poll, and then we're not in violation of the bylaws. Somebody downtown on a Wednesday afternoon
I
can't hit
second
us with a, search and seizure. So if it pleases the council, and Mr. Henry, would you entertain the notion of being the assistant secretary?
You're comfy with that?
I will have to think about that for the next month.
Okay, but for the next, from now until November, will you serve as the assistant secretary, de facto secretary, and still continue doing the votes for us?
I will take the minutes, that's all I'll say at this
Okay,
time.
so I make a motion that we adopt the language in 8R as is, the VNNC to create the position of assistant secretary and an election of the primary secretary to take place at the November meeting, with the caveat that Mr. Robbins and Mr. Luna circle, around with the city attorney and Leonard Schaefer and Lydia Grant and get to the bottom of this. I mean, this isn't like a witch hunt on Mr. Henry. This is just us making sure this council can still
Operate.
buy Subway next month.
Right.
You know?
Yep.
So the motion on the floor is the language in 8R accepted as is with the change of October to November for the primary secretary's position. Do I have a second?
Second.
With that, I call for the vote, Mr. Assistant Secretary.
I take offense at the use of that language after what I just said.
Okay, so then you don't want to
I just take
handle the
offense at
votes,
the
but you'll
use-
do the
I-
minutes.
Think about it.
I've made a more limited statement than assistant secretary.
So who would handle the votes for this?
No, I
council?
said I would take the minutes. That's all I said. Period. I would
Yes,
willingly
Rosemary.
take the minutes.
The secretary. All right. So the motion on the floor is the language in 8R as is with the change from October to November. Mr. Lazarovitz seconded it. Mr. Secretary, I call for the vote.
President Thomas,
Yes.
Vice President Benjamin.
Yes.
I will take the minutes, but I will vote no. Ms. Hop,
Yes. Aye.
Ms. Havard. Ms. Meyer,
Yes.
Mr. Lazarovitz,
Yes.
Mr. Martin.
Yes.
Ms. Skelton,
Yes.
Mr. Camara,
I abstain.
Mr. Anand.
Seeing as this is just a naming thing, I'm going to vote yes.
Mr. De La Cuesta,
Just a name. Yes. It's a human being.
Mr. Padden, Ms. Padden,
Yes.
Mr. Lynn,
Yes.
Mr. Luna.
Because I'm on the committee that's about to discover this, I'm going to abstain.
He's a nobody because he doesn't.
Mr. Marabi,
Yes.
Ms. Raines,
Abstain.
Mr. Robbins.
And for the same reason, abstain.
Okay. I count 12 aye, 1 no, and 5 abstain.
Very good. At least we've CYA'd for a month. So there we go. Let's jump into new business. 8A, Jessica Borak, are you in the room? Going once, going twice. All right, that is going to be off the agenda now. 8B, discussion on the earned paid sick days issue, legislation and possible actions in the form of a community impact statement and letters of support. Rosemary Jenkins.
Thank you. I am Rosemary Jenkins, and I serve with LANE, the Los Angeles Alliance for a New Economy, as well as CLUE, the Clergy and Laity United for Economic Justice, as well as the various organizations that are supporting our community workers. Let me give you a quick background about earned paid sick leave. As of July 1st of this year, the state has implemented a law that applies to temporary, part-time, and full-time people. If they've worked at least 30 days, they can start accruing 1 hour sick leave for every 30 hours they work, up to 3 days a year, which can be rolled over at least 1 year. And then it depends on what their employer wants to do after that. In the meantime, we've been working with City Council, which has passed the raise the wage package, and LA County has aligned with that as well. Now, what is coming up in the very near future, which would need your immediate attention, is what we are asking is that this Van Nuys Neighborhood Council write a letter of support to the LA City Council via Herb Wesson, the president, that you support the earned paid sick leave for the all workers within the city of Los Angeles, and a similar letter to the county supervisors, that Michael Antonovich is the president. Now, what is being considered is this. We're trying to align what we do in LA City with a program that's already been implemented in San Francisco. And the idea is that if you are a large business or a big chain, you would have 9 days a year for your employees' earned paid sick leave. If you're a small business, then it would be 5 days a year. Okay, and that is what's currently being considered at the city and county level. So I am asking a letter of support to both bodies with regard to that. Now, obviously, the details may be modified a little bit as more consideration through their subcommittees are held. But those are two things. The third thing is, at the federal level, there is what they call the Healthy Families Act, Senate Bill 497 and House Bill 932. And this is asking for 7 paid sick days a year. And really the issue is this, and I've been involved with a lot of demonstrations on behalf of the workers. You go to the market. Do you want your food handled by ill people?
No.
You know, I mean, it just stands to reason. And there's any place where you go to a movie theater, they're going to hand you the tickets. If they've just sneezed into their hand, you know, you're exposed. So there really isn't a job that our community health is not affected. And then there's a safety issue. Do you want somebody working on a big rig, driving a big rig, or those cranes, and they're so drowsy from being ill that they do something wrong and the crane drops and people get injured? So I am asking that you also write to our Congress member. Tony Cardenas is our Congress member. Does Van Nuys Neighborhood Council overlap into anybody else's? No. Okay. And I've met with all right, but I'm just wondering if there's another Congress member. No. Okay, so then I would ask that you also write a letter to Tony Cardenas, who's just a real friend of the community in so many ways, asking for his support on the Healthy Families Act, Senate 497 and HR 932. I know we've met with Senator Feinstein asking on the Senate side for her support and Barbara Boxer's support. So do you have any questions for me before you consider this? Yes, sir.
Why don't we make it the same? Why, if you have a small business for only 5 days, you should be penalized because you're working for a small business? I think it should be across the board all the same.
Well, I understand what you're saying, except they're trying to take into consideration the fact that maybe, excuse me, smaller businesses aren't in a position right off to afford giving their workers 9 days. I agree with you 100%.
Well, if you get sick, then you're going to work sick, and you're going to make somebody...
No, I understand that, but they have nothing now. I have been going around every...
I would support
yes.
across the board the same. 7
okay.
days, 9 days.
Well, that's up to you to decide whether you want to support the 5 and 9 or whether you would like it, you know, the same number.
Hey,
Remember, the federal one is 7 days.
I think 7
so,
days should be
okay.
the same.
All right. And that's really
with
something...
With all due respect, Joseph, I want to come out and say that as a small business owner and somebody who is impacted directly by this, and thousands of my compatriot friends who are also small business owners are affected by this. And this is a blanket thing that ACA has already implemented. So if we're already underneath this 1 hour, you have to remember the city is throwing a whole bunch of more permits on us. Sanitation's coming after us for more permits. You have all kinds of raise in fees across every single kind of permit you can imagine in the city. We have higher minimum wage. That increases our workers' comp insurance. Everything is going up and is affecting small businesses horrifically. We can't make the bottom line. I mean, places like mine, we're going to have to shut up. We're just going to have to shut the doors. I mean, it's that simple. I've seen the place across the street from us close down. I saw the place a block away from us shut down. You go up and down Van Nuys Boulevard, places are shutting down. If you're a small taco chain, you have 3 employees, you can't afford them anymore. What are you going to do?
Jumping in both feet.
Candido.
Mr. President, thank you. You've been very kind to me tonight. Mr. Nunn, I agree with you. As a small business owner for almost 30-something years, we understand what it takes to run a business. And I'm for strong unions. I love strong unions. But the difference between a union member and a small business owner is we got the balls and the guts to go out there and go beyond a job. So when you sit there and you talk about the stress and what it does to small business, it is. We're becoming small business unfriendly. And I have to agree with Paul on this one. I don't feel this is good legislation.
So in other words, the small guy that works for a small business will never get ahead. God forbid he gets sick. He'll die. He can't afford getting sick. So he's got to be Superman.
And we also have to consider the fact that people are using the emergency room for primary care, and that's on the taxpayers. And if I could just read just a couple sentences here from information that has been gleaned. It says, when sick workers are able to stay home, the spread of disease slows and workplaces are both healthier and more productive. Paid sick days also reduce presenteeism, the productivity loss when employees work sick, which is estimated to cost our national economy $160 billion annually and surpasses the cost of absenteeism. Paid sick days have also been shown to reduce workplace injuries. Workers who earn paid sick days are 28% less likely than workers who don't earn paid sick days to be injured on the job, with an even greater difference among workers in high-risk occupations. Now, I sympathize with small business owners, but I have a hard approach to it. And I've said this publicly at city hall meetings and county, and that is, and please don't take it the wrong way, but a person should not open a business if they cannot take care of their workers properly. And sick days is important. Being able to stay home if your child has the flu is important. And you don't want children going to school and infecting other children and the teachers and other people with whom they come into contact. You don't want workers to infect customers, let alone each other. Workplace injury, you're talking about workman's compensation. I understand where small businesses are coming from, but this is America, and I think part of our American creed is a moral imperative to look after the least of us. Are there any questions for me?
Sorry, but if I may respond to that, please, Mr. President.
That wasn't exactly criticism. It's just my
let
opinion.
me tell you right now that if you are a small business owner, you need that person. You look after that person because they're like family. Because there's only 2 or 3 or 5 of you working there. So if you think about, if you're a small business, you treat that person almost like their family. So if you don't think that we care for our employees, I think you're greatly mistaken.
So if you let them stay home and pay them?
Well, you know what? We already built into it 3 days. So when you factor in the fact that these are paid days. Now, They did have the option of us saying, oh, don't work today, or we'll go ahead and switch your shift around. And oftentimes, the way you're making it sound like they don't work at all, they lose their pay, they're totally out. No, what happens is, I'm not feeling well today, John, can I trade shifts with you? I'll come on Friday and I'll work your shift. So it's not like we don't work around each other's shifts and accommodate each other. We do. And it's not like anybody has to lose any money over it. They can accommodate each other, and it's already getting 24 hours prepaid out of somebody's pocket. You have to remember that that money that you're talking about has to come from somewhere. Either it's going to come from the taxpayer when they're going to buy their Snickers bar and it's $5 a Snickers bar, or it's got to come from somewhere. You know what I mean?
You would still have the option of accommodating shifts, as you've mentioned. The point
But this
is,
paid
if
sick
Yes.
leave and it's accrued.
I understand that. I'm saying that if somebody is supposed to work tomorrow and is sick and they want to work Sunday instead, and there's a shift change, then they're not having to take that sick day. But
Oh, and anybody who's given the option of free money is not going to take
well,
it.
it's not free money. They've earned it. I mean, according to the state, it's well. Don't laugh at me because I
Then why
deserve
not
more
give them
respect than that.
I agree with you then. I agree that maybe it should be 90 days of paid sick leave
No.
because they're not going to take it and they're not going to use it. Then why not just do it more? It's accrued, it's paid, it's money that they're adding on to the payroll, while still adding money onto the payroll in other ways.
You have your opinion. I have to respectfully disagree. But does anybody else have a question for me before you talk
Earned
about
paid sick leave.
Excuse what?
What do you guys want to do on this one? Do you want to kick it back down to committee and iron it out? Do you
This is
wanna-
timely because City Council is going to be meeting soon there in subcommittee, so it's not as if this could be, and then you've got the Christmas holidays and all that. So I'm just saying that I'm concerned about how timely it is. Now, if you wanted to wait a little bit on the federal one, which is not as time sensitive, and the county is going to pretty much align itself with what the city is doing. They
How
did.
fast is the city moving on this?
Well,
Mary?
when they came back from vacation, which was like a month ago, they've been considering this. So they haven't had a formal meeting where we can speak to the committee members and the full council yet.
If we bumped it till November and we're forced to deal with it in November, would that be
Well,
okay?
I think if you could make a decision November, yes or no, whether you're going to write the letters, I think that would be fine.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
So if it pleases the council,
I have a
we
question.
will.
I have a question.
Yes.
Do we know if there are any other neighborhood councils that have filed a community impact statement on this?
To my knowledge, there are, but I couldn't name them. I know
Would you be able to provide that information when we discuss this in November?
I'll tell you, the meeting that I was supposed to have on that was canceled for tomorrow because of illness of the leader. So as soon as I can.
Are they getting paid to be ill? Is it?
No, I just think it would be valuable information for this board to know if there had been other neighborhood councils that
Because we could use that language. We could use the language in their CIS.
Well, true, but we're
Well, there you
punting
go.
this for a month, and that would be valuable
For
information.
so many reasons.
If I can get that information in a timely manner, I will.
That would be great. Thank you.
Charles, would you mind having this go through your committee just so you're?
That would be great.
Because you guys do have some work this next month to do anyway
Thank
with
you.
the secretary's position. So, Rosemary, I'm going to get you, Mr. Robbins, and Mr. Luna's emails so you can brief them on this, and then have it go through their committee, and then in November we can act on this. Is that okay?
Mr. President?
You know the wheels of government turn slowly. Yes, Mr. Luna.
Thank you very much. One tiny little logistical thing. My email doesn't work.
Why? We've been over this.
I know we've been over this. I don't have access to it. I don't know.
Is that your D Luna or Daniel Luna?
I've tried them
or-
both. I've tried dot.
Have
I've
you
tried it all.
Danny Boy?
I've
Luna?
tried Danny Boy. I've tried all of that.
Okay.
It's probably my
So can
fault.
you email me and let me know that?
Yeah, yeah, I'll email you. If you don't hear from me, it's because.
All right.
Can you look into this?
I'd be happy. Okay, if you're the webmaster, I'll be happy to work with you.
You want to pull it up right now and we'll just double check it? Okay. Yes, Penelope.
Email address and password.
No, Howard's going to pull it up and pull up the administration master account.
Thanks.
Penelope. Oh. All right. So let's. Well, We have done our arguments for tonight already. We wasted it all on the secretary's position. So let's just start going down here, and we'll be out of here in about 5 minutes, guys. We only have 17 other things to discuss. All right, 8C, 6200 North Kester Avenue and 14849 West Delano Avenue. A bonus density with 2 on-menu incentives. A new apartment building with 16 market rate units with a 1 to 11 to be very low, 2 units, and a 1 to 35 bonus density, 6 units to become a 22-unit apartment with 20 2-bedroom, 2 to 3-bedroom, and 30% bike to replace parking support from board case number DIR 2015-1953 DB. How did this get out of committee, Bruno?
It went through. Just to let everybody know, it did pass through planning, so they do have the entitlements. So what Steve Friedman is sort of a honorable thing is to get the
You're looking
the
for a
blessing
letter of
from the-
support, Mr. Friedman?
Yes.
Do we have any objection to giving him a letter of support, or is there anything we want to yell at him about right now? No, we like his trees and the rendering and the orange bit right there. I like the orange right there. That's nice. Are we?
And we're
pleased with it.
Yeah, we're pleased with it, and we're happy to bring it to the board.
Okay, Mr. Freeman, can you give us the abridged version, and we'll get you your letter of support?
Yes, very quickly.
And then I'll call on you. Yeah.
Good evening, and I commend you all for your endurance and your heartfelt debate.
The debate club.
Debate club. I'm a real estate lawyer. I've been working and developing real estate in Van Nuys for 20 years. This will be our 5th building in the neighborhood, and we're just pleased to have your support. Obviously open to any suggestions or questions or issues you may have, but this is a corner over on Kester and Delano that was the former Kester Tire Store, and we were fortunate enough to relocate them to another location. We gave them a little bit of financial support to move, and we were fortunate also to receive the support of the council person's office. Ackley Padilla in particular has been very helpful in helping us push this project through the various agencies. And so with that, any
Fair
questions?
enough. Candy, and then we'll call for the vote. Yes.
Mr. President, I'm in favor of this. It's an improvement. The people in the area want it.
Good. Thank you. Mr. Ackerman.
I'm just a little concerned that you're only getting 2 low or very low income apartments out of this deal. I would try and negotiate for a little more than just 2, maybe 3 or 4.
It's actually 6.
6?
Huh?
Okay.
Good negotiation.
Excellent. Yay. Moving on.
You're nailing them tonight, Mr. Ackerman. Without further objection, I make a motion. Yes, Torino.
I have a few questions. We talked during the whole Plum Committee, and one of the things is sort of, there's another development north of the property. And I think your idea was to work with the property owner next to it to complement the area as far as, one question, on your side of the street, is there parking on it? Is there going to be parking on that side of the street?
It's all to be determined by Bureau of Engineering and Department of Transportation as to whether or not there'll be street parking. Obviously, there's going to be parking for the tenants. It'll be a podium-style building with parking on grade. And, it's a busy little corridor there, and it's sort of hit and miss with the parking on the street. On the other side, as you know, I guess that would be the west side of the street. There is parking. Look, we're in favor of trying to get the cars to slow down there, and as you know from our discussions earlier, we're very interested in widening the sidewalk, planting trees, north and south, and encouraging the developer to the north to do likewise. So we're doing everything we can to make that a real beautiful pedestrian walkway over there, and as you know now, it's just kind of crumbling rock.
Yeah, and it's the sidewalk is asphalt.
Yep.
So I don't know how it's gonna, because it seems like the property up north, there's no parking allowed, but in yours it does. So I don't know if that if that's going to continue northward?
Yeah, we've tried to work with the Bureau of Engineering to make it all, in parallel and to sync up. I can't control what
Yeah,
the developer to the north is going to do.
And also, you mentioned that you're planning to put trees along the sidewalk.
Correct.
And what is the distance between the property line to the curb line, what you have now?
Couldn't tell you. I'd have to look at the plans.
Yeah, because I looked at it, and it's like 12 feet. That's pretty wide.
Yeah.
But
it's all by code,